Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so it's feeling a little lazy, kind of lethargic. I think it has something to do with a little more sodium. It doesn't take much because my body is so sensitive to damn near everything I put in it. But when it comes to sodium, particularly salt of any kind, I start adding more salt, the less energy I feel I have. So that's something I noticed. I got some seasoning, some type of chili lime seasoning. Anything that doesn't have garlic in it should be okay, and as long as it doesn't have garlic and onion pepper, I should be able to season my food with it. Problem is there's a lot of salt in this one, so for the last 2 days I've been putting that in the food. Tastes great, but like I said, my body reacts very poorly to sodium. So yeah, man, just dealing with that. But if anything, I just wanted to actually make a Laker video. But I'll let this be a therapy session real quick and move on after I say a few things. But I just wanted to ask everybody to have a fantastic day. We take for granted life sometimes. We don't know when certain things are going to happen, but I've been doing a lot of praying as of late, and it's just about people who are dealing with natural disasters and genocide and things of that nature. My life is good. I mean, I have my ups and downs, but in comparison to what other people are going through, living in war-torn situations, going through natural disasters, I think about those who are dealing with Milton, Hurricane Milton that's coming through, should be touching down probably today. And, looking at the horrifying predictions of what could be possible or what could be expected, you just understand that people need to get the heck out of these areas, man. And some of them may not be able to. Homeless people, individuals who have a lot of children, not a lot of money, people who don't have vehicles, stuff like that. The winds are coming at over 100 miles per hour, and the water in some of these places where the flooding is expected to take place is going to be as high as 10 feet. Hey, that's map changing stuff right there. And as I said to myself as I was thinking about it and praying about it, this is going to be a map changing hurricane if it does what they expect it to do. It's going to be some slightly different dents in the map as it pertains to Florida. Just a little slight changes to the dynamic of the state, and that's a natural thing. The world is continuing to move around. If you look at the map as in how it's been, it's set up. All these different continents used to be together basically as one slap of land, and then over time certain things like natural disasters and earthquakes change everything. So your likelihood of seeing more of that is inevitable. And so when you see hurricanes like this, these are the type of things that make that what it is. So in the worst case scenarios for all of us who have civilized society, we're gonna have things change the outlook of our maps. And some of these earthquakes and some of these things that are happening, whether you are a believer in climate change or not, you just got to understand that this is what we have to be able to withstand. And there's a lot of casualties to these situations. People die, man. And so that's where my head goes today. It's not necessarily on myself. It's more so those who are dealing with circumstances outside of their control, and asking for prayers for everybody. As I always say, if you pray for me, it'll land on myself, but if you pray for everybody, it'll land on them. That's what we're thinking about, man. People who are going to deal with all different types of stuff, not just the stuff we're aware of. And I read something yesterday. They said that based on how this Milton hurricane is coming through Florida, there's a damn good chance that it destroys one of the bases that have been deploying our American military to Israel. One of the places they've been mainly sending our guys out, it looks like it's going to be destroyed. And it was more or less a publication that was celebrating the idea of that, a pro freedom for Palestine publication, essentially saying God is coming through, letting America know that he doesn't appreciate what they're doing. He don't like that they're taking the side of those who are aggressive in committing this genocide. I'm definitely inclined to agree. Y'all know I am. But, I'm not sure if it's actually going to destroy that thing or not, or if I should be celebrating that. But, just the same, I do think that God is not happy, and I do think he's going to respond. And as I was praying last night about the hurricane, I read that and saw what it was that was describing. A thought in my head said, you don't want to see what's going to come for those who are doing this to these people, though. You think this is bad, just keep watching, because those who are selling your country down the river for Israel, those who are in Israel celebrating themselves and slaughtering others, and saying that they better than everybody else, pretending like God wants them to do this, they're gonna see things that are gonna directly hurt bad, directly hit them bad, in response to God's intentions upon paying them back for all the evil that they've been doing. It's going to be payback time for a lot of these people someday. It's people who are going through the victimization of people who have since seen their comeuppance, saying when they were going through it, someday that person is going to get what they deserve. And that day came around. Well, I'm telling you that's exactly what came to mind. It's a lot of people who are celebrating and championing the suffering of others in regards to the genocide that we've been witnessing for the past year. They are going to have a day where all of that they're putting out, that they wish for the Palestinians, is going to return to them. And it ain't going to be pretty. It ain't going to be pretty. And if for some reason the Lord does destroy whatever Air Force base or military base, I should say, in the line of Milton, it's a small piece of what his intentions are in regards to making this situation be paid for. Very small. And so that's what came to mind, man. I want people to understand, Milton, as we talked about in the previous therapy session, and the other one, Helene, are natural disasters or unnatural disasters, if you believe in climate change, that are bringing about the idea that Americans are disposable by their very own government in place for the foreign entity that it's chosen to align its pockets with in Israel. And a lot of times we're finding these stories where people are looking for opportunities to get aid and they're not getting it. And then you look over and find Israel is giving massive amounts of wealth, getting massive amount of wealth from us, from our tax dollars, with really no explanation as to why that money can't be allocated to those who need it the most in our very own spaces. You know what I mean? So that's what it really comes down to. You start looking around and seeing enough of that, and you start realizing your government, it's not a hearsay that they don't care about you, or that they prioritize a foreign entity, a foreign land over yours own life, but it's proof in these actions that is the case. And we should be very concerned about that as American citizens, especially during election time, when we know damn well our opinion about them should, in theory, mean more right now than it ever has. At this point, they're willing to put all of that on the line because they believe that this is more important than us. And that should be extremely alarming on several fronts. They believe that Israel is more important than us during election time. They know damn well that this is going to cost them some votes. Both sides should know that this is going to cost them votes. And yet they still are intentional on helping our ally in doing what it is they're doing, which we know, those of us who are paying attention, we know is wrong. But even if we didn't know it was wrong, it still shouldn't be taking precedent over our very own lives. After all, they're taking it from our tax dollars. So if our tax dollars can't save one another, then what the hell are we paying them for? That's without even taking into account the moral aspect of what it is that Israel's actually doing. Just pretend you in the dark about that. Pretend you ain't heard a single word about that. This is still messed up. our people are gonna be under 10 feet of water. It could be Katrina already all over again in Florida, in Orlando, and Kissimmee, and all these places like that. But our money, the budget that we're able to give to Israel and to Ukraine, we can't snatch that back in our time of need so that we can make sure these people have an opportunity to rebuild or pour more into our rescue efforts. Like, if you don't see something wrong with that, something desperately wrong with that, then I don't know what the hell's wrong with you, to be honest with you. And so that right there should shine a light on, you know, what is going on, and from there start to answer questions about where we stand morally in regards to what Israel and Ukraine are specifically doing. You should then be forced to wonder, and if you're smart enough, ask questions or do homework on why it is so important to our government that we're sending them money over us where we need it the most. What can Israel and Ukraine do for my people if I'm an American who doesn't have any idea what's going on there? Or even if I'm an American who believes in, you know, supporting my allies, right or wrong. Let's just say I'm one of those. What can they do for me when I need them the most? Why am I taking money that I desperately need for my people and sending it to them when they're in desperate need, maybe? You know, let's just say I believe that. I'm rolling with the narrative, Hamas and all that. They're in desperate need because people are trying to kill them. But we're in desperate need because a hurricane or two hurricanes in here, that's back to back, basically. Can't we take some of that, at least some of that money, some of that budget, and send it to those people who are in need in those hurricane circumstances? Why is that not possible? Why can't one of these U.S. government officials who address us all the time explain to me how important it is that I save them over saving me? And if they don't feel I'm worthy of answering that question, then we need to start talking about our rights, the responsibility of those making decisions, the importance of yielding to that ally as opposed to our very own selves, and what would cause all of that to be something that these government officials deem is absolutely necessary. And then when we get those answers, you start coming around to realizing how messed up it actually is. But that's what I think a lot of Americans are at right now. It's like, damn. So you trying to tell me during election time, we're rallying around Israel in such a way that we'll kill our own people to save them? Damn. So I guess it's Israel first then. It's Ukraine first. It's not America first, right? Got to send them their money for their circumstances. Us and our circumstances be damned, right? I'm just trying to figure it out. I think all Americans would be at this point. So that's what I think is going on here. I think the answers to them questions are clear. We've been talking about them for a year, but the truth of the matter is, this is where we're at as it pertains to our country, waking up from this fantasy world of America being first, and that our vote counts, and that, you know, we will protect ourselves and our citizens. And you know what I mean? Now it's like, all right, it's about how can we make Israel happy? How can we make Israel happy? That's what America's number one goal is right now, is to make sure that Israel not only protected, but feels protected to the maximum in regards to ourselves. And so that should alarm anybody. That should alarm everybody here, man. And so I think that's what the storms are about. I think that's why them storms are coming our way. I think that's why they're rushing at us in the way that it is. I think that's what the Most High is trying to do, is trying to shine a light on some things and make some people ask some questions that otherwise wouldn't. They simply wouldn't. And not only that, but I think that you know, the American government is not doing a very good job protecting themselves from having to answer those questions. And it raises even more questions as to why they would allow themselves to be seen so poorly in the eyes of their own people so that they can make others happy in different places. That it's going to raise an entirely bit of more questions. It's like, so you don't care that we see this and we're not happy with it? You don't care that we see this and are going to think less of you because of it? What are those that you call your allies have on you that would make it so that you're so comfortable with something that you've protected against for so long, which is your perception amongst your own people in this country? You spend millions and millions of dollars on campaigns so that you can gain my support. And when you need it the most during election time, you suddenly don't care about my support. That's really strange. That is extremely strange, man. And so I think that's what the average American should be thinking right about now. And when this hurricane hits, as it will, and it takes on what it takes on in damages, and that money ain't coming, that's what's going to be thought. Be the pro-Palestinian American that's thinking these thoughts. It's gonna be MAGA grandma and liberal Tony, who don't have any thoughts about anything other than what it is that they've been taught in regards to America first. They don't really think for themselves in that way. They got all nothing but propaganda in their mind. This is gonna shake some of that up to make them, even them, wonder what's going on. And I don't think, from a spiritual standpoint, that's by accident at all. So, yeah, man, that's really what it is. You want to know my place in this situation right now? I never ever tell people who to vote for. I tell you who I'm not voting for. That's that. I don't co-sign political people on my channel. I haven't done that. I don't believe I've ever done that, and I'm not going to start right now. But what I will say is, I do believe that your vote should matter to some degree. I think we've been taught that our vote matters more than it does, or that we have more of a choice than we do. But I do think that there's some value to it to those in power. That's what I will say. I think it has some value. Maybe not what they want us to think, but it's something. And so as a person who doesn't really believe so strongly about making sure I hit the voting polls, I will be hitting them up this year. I will be hitting them up this year. I will tell you that. And I don't believe in voting for the lesser of two evils. So you do your own homework in regards to what choice I think probably is the better one. You know what I mean? Because I ain't choosing either one of them. Put it like that. And if you follow me and you know what I'm paying attention to, then you're probably thinking that might make some sense for you too, to be honest with you. So that's where I'm at. I ain't co-signing nobody, because at the end of the day, if I co-sign somebody and they turn out to be jerks, I'm gonna be hurt that I did that. And that's how I really feel about it. I don't really trust the system itself. I think it's corruptible in and of itself. When you give somebody power, they go from being somebody who means well to by the end of it, they just aligned with the nonsense. We've seen that too many times for me to sit up here and say, and this is who we should vote for, because I trust this person. I don't trust nobody. Not when it comes to government. I think there should be some leadership, but I think the system itself is corruptible. I think you can go in a good person, come out a bad one. So until we fix the system itself, we, the people, fix the system itself, I don't really know that I can trust anybody who's aiming for that system's power, aiming to be at the top of that system. I don't know if I can trust anybody. That's the truth. So you might get up in there and find out some of those things that your choices are not the choices you thought when you were running for office. Now suddenly you're aligned with certain things because they leave you with out the most responsible way to maneuver outside of it. And that's what I think happens to a lot of them too. They get caught up by the balls in some ways that maybe I'm not even thinking about. And then suddenly they have to wonder. And I was thinking about something this morning. You know, we pride ourselves on being people who would stand up against whatever, however. But I look back on my past as a young person. My mother worked for a company, Fox K, what's the name of that station? KFWB, KTTV. She worked in the industry for many years. And I think about today, if she was still alive today and she still had those jobs, I would be faced with a strong conundrum. Because some of the stuff that I talk about on this channel, I believe if the wrong people got a hold of that information, they would hold it against my mom. Because that's how Hollywood works. That's how those in power really kind of sway their leverage against people who would otherwise be confident to speak up against them. They use whatever they can to get you by the balls. If they can't sway you, they're gonna sway the people you love somehow, or they're gonna threaten those people in some ways. And given the fact that she worked for media, I would be faced with a real difficult conversation for myself saying some of these things. It would be difficult. She might end up getting fired. You see what I'm saying? Because it's something that comes out of my mouth. Maybe I'm not worried about what happens to me, but maybe I am worried about causing problems for my mother who works hard. You understand what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden I'm corrupt because of it, right? Because I'm not willing to risk the harm that they may be willing to do to my mother's career or worse, that I end up cowering behind that and not speaking up on what it is I should be. I think many people are faced with that right now. And many people are choosing protecting whatever it is they got to protect so that they can sleep better at night, rather than speaking up against the powers that be that ultimately hold that over their heads and over everyone else. I'd like to think of myself as someone strong enough to say, well, if the devil gave my mom the job, then the devil don't need to be employing my mother any longer. That kind of thing, you know what I mean? Like, not gonna let them have that type of leverage over me. But if I would tell you that it wouldn't cross my mind and maybe I wouldn't speak as freely, I'd be lying. You know what I mean? Because I really wouldn't want to create problems for my mother. And so you think about people who have children, think about people who have friends, family members in places, situations, and secrets on top of that maybe they did some things they shouldn't have did that these people know about. Like, I get it, that power is swayable. It sways you. You know, that type of leverage that they have on these people can sway you. Even if you mean well, you're faced with the how much faith do you have in God conversation that you will be willing to put all of this at risk that they have leverage on in order for you to speak freely upon what it is that they're doing. How much you feel it hurts versus how much your voice can do good. If I'm gonna sit up here and be screaming at the top of the mountain and everybody around me in my field is gonna be silent and pantomiming as if this is fine, then what good is my voice going to do when I'm speaking the truth versus the bad it can do for those that I love for doing so? And a lot of people, they don't feel that their voice would matter as much. If anything, they would just be kicked out of the rooms where they otherwise be privy to the truth. And that is a strong swayer into the spaces of corruption controlling things. Now, I think that's, when you think about it from the outside looking in, wanting change to happen, it's very easy to vilify those people who are behind those circumstances. But when you put in them shoes, we're going to find out how good of a person you really are, how much faith you have in God, how much you care about your voice mattering versus how much you're willing to do damage with that voice, and how much courage you really have in your heart, and how much you really care about what it is that you're talking about. It's the people with leverage in life, without family, without circumstances that the others can hurt, that find themselves most confident, though the Zionists can't hurt you. Those are the people who speak the freest in a lot of cases. Some of the people who know the most, who want to speak the freest, probably are the ones who are silenced the most, with the most coming against them in regards to what we described. They'll hurt this, they'll hurt that, they'll do this, they'll tell that, and nobody will believe you, and nobody around you will co-sign you, and you will be standing on that hill by yourself. Like, not everybody's going to see that as the better path, especially when they've worked so hard, or others that they're trying to protect have worked so hard to get wherever they're at. Not to mention that they may not have been raised to speak up. They may not have been raised to look at those type of situations as very necessary or very helpful. Or they fear what comes with that. Maybe they were raised in a household where you better keep your mouth shut. You saw what happened to so-and-so. Maybe that was how they were raised. It's like corruption has a strong stranglehold on this country and in the world, because a lot of people aren't teaching one another to believe that it's a better path to fight it. It's not that it's right. It's just that it requires a lot of strength and a lot of sacrifice. Sacrifice to things that may not even have anything to do with you, but more so make you look bad in the eyes of the people you care about. That's the type of sacrifice that you have to be willing to live with. That you sacrificing yourself and people you care about so that you can say the truth about certain things. Not everybody's wired that way. And that they're not wired that way sees corruption continue to survive. And those of us who were raised, like few of us who were raised to believe that standing on our square is the right way to go, may then be willing to risk such things. But those who were taught to shut their mouth and were raised by people who shut their mouth, and then they're faced with this, they're not going to open their mouth. They were raised to adhere to the power of corruption. They're raised to adhere to the power of wrongdoing because it holds leverage over them, and they don't have much in their heart or conscience that would tell them that fighting it is the smarter move for them. That's a good portion of the world. That's a good majority of the people who control our country, I believe. Raised to play the game, not necessarily to hold it accountable. We've talked about these people in a lot of different ways, people who are doing this behind the scenes, but there's a different point of view that I'm bringing to the table. I don't feel sorry for them, nor do I think what they're doing is the best path for them or us, but I think I understand them a bit better than I've said I have on this channel. It's just that I don't think it gave much credence to what needs to happen by admitting that I would war with that myself in some ways, and that I resent that side of myself. Ultimately resent that. I don't think I'm better for that. If anything, I'm glad I'm not faced with that. I'm glad the Lord made me this way, so that I ain't worried about that, so that I don't have so many different things that they can do to me to keep me complicit and silent in what they're doing. That I was raised by somebody who explained to me that she was around people who stood up against the status quo and were vilified for it. She was raised around the Black Panthers, or rather she was growing up in the generation where they were starting to really make that thing happen. She wasn't really raised around them. She was their age. And since it was in San Francisco, the founding, from what I understand, the real founders of the Black Panther Party were right there in her neighborhood. She was around them real ones. And she was just the right age to come up with them. You understand what I'm saying? My mother's from that. That's one of the reasons why I speak like this. Because she was able to paint a picture, a personal picture, that completely contradicted the vilification of freedom fighters. She didn't need Time magazine to tell her who the Black Panthers were, because she knew them dudes. She knew them. Some of them were her homeboys, her friends, people she went to school with, people she went to grade school with that grew up to become that. You understand what I'm saying? So for me, I'm privy to that type of raising to say, this is the choice that I'm willing to make and speaking this way and sacrificing potential things that could ultimately be beneficial to me, because I was raised to believe that that is exactly what a good person does when they see something wrong. So I'm telling y'all, man, not everybody was raised by by who I was raised by. Not everybody was told, hey, I knew the people the CIA was saying were bad guys. They weren't bad people. If anything, they were reacting to the bad energy that was happening toward our people. And then I get to fast forward to where I'm at right now at 40 years old and see the same thing happening to Hamas. Now, had I not been raised by somebody who trained me to believe that all of this is the case, who knows what I would be inclined to believe or align with, especially if she would have taught me the opposite. And a lot of people, a good majority of our country was taught the opposite. Or are aligned in such a way to where it's country first, flag first. We're the majority in some cases, or we're the superiority in some cases, and we got to fend off those who are ultimately trying to take our power away. And this is what's required, that type of thing. Like, if you're raised like that, the last thing you're going to be is sympathetic to someone who's going to stand against all of that for the betterment of what they know, what they believe, for which you are not taught is right. It's going to require a certain change in the collective mindset and experience of the everyday person to get away from being okay with corruption, to have unlearned the vilification of the resistance to corruption, and then from there to join that resistance themselves. It's going to take a lot. But what I'm here to say is I think it's coming. I think that the shadows from which corruption can live in, and the spaces from which it can corrupt the minds of those who would otherwise stand against it, those things that kept that together are starting to deteriorate before our very eyes. And I think a lot of those who were holding corruption in 2024 are not adapting well to social media as it pertains to them, their lives being debunked. They're not reacting well to the idea that there is a mind out there that's not corrupted by the propaganda that is placed, having the ears of others who may be, and being just as convincing and swaying as their propaganda ultimately has been, swaying people away from that propaganda and waking those minds. I don't think they're ready for that. And because of it, it's going to be much more difficult to go forward, having people so fine and so fearful of rising up against it and deteriorating it entirely. And I don't know that what it can do can adapt to this. I don't know that it can adapt to this. I don't think it's meant to. It's going to have to become more bold in its intentions rather than stealth, so to speak. You're going to have to just say, hey, yo, we're better than everybody else, and we're going to do what we have to do, and we don't give a damn. That's going to be probably more effective than the ways that worked in the past before everybody had a camera and a microphone in their hands. And so for me, I just think that I'm on the right path for the generation I'm in. I'm thankful to being raised by somebody who gave me the courage to stand up for what I believe in. And she told me to do so many times in our lives before she passed away. And now that I'm doing that, I'm comfortable with it in ways that I don't think many are. And it's unfortunate because those who are in the most positions to stop it are the least comfortable with making the change. People who talk a good game, but will align and fall in line at the end of the day. And they're going to go down in history very poorly, just like those who are corrupt are going down in history very poorly. And they weren't privy to the wisdom of that. They weren't afforded the gift of being conscious to align with what will age properly. They didn't have what it took, more or less, to unlearn the teaching that allowed them to be on the wrong side of history. They didn't believe in God strong enough to say, I don't care what the enemy's going to do to me. I'm going to stand on my square and let him handle all the circumstances necessary. They believed in their own ambition enough to get them into those rooms. But once they got in them rooms and found out there was a lot of wrongdoing in those rooms, they stopped believing in themselves as it pertains to them being a solution to stopping all that should be stopped in those rooms. It's amazing to me how that works. People with the most ambition in a lot of cases, with the most drive, are still not confident in themselves to be able to thrive without those rooms once they get in them. Some of those powerful people in the world still yield to the most simple of fears in regards to what could go wrong if they don't align. I think that's a really strong thing to think about. People who've amassed so much success in this world don't harbor much confidence as to doing the right thing being the better path for them, as to being decent toward people who don't have a lot not being the worst path for them. They're still weak, whether they know it or not. That yielding to the enemy's intentions makes them weak. They can read the Bible or the Quran 17 times a day, but will still not believe in God enough to stand up against the forced suffering of peoples. Or to stand on their square and say, I'm guilty of this, and this is why I've been silent. Now let's proceed to see what happens when that guilt is no longer held over my head. You know I'm a sicko. You know I did this. You know I did that. And you're also going to know because I'm going to tell you that they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing that, and they're doing that. Now, God, do with me what you will. You know how few people actually are willing to do that? And live with the consequences or die with the consequences, whatever's afforded that? They ain't gonna do it. And they can. They literally can. They so scared for their guilt to be shown to all of us, and then from there having to be held accountable for that guilt, that they will allow those who are even way more guilty, much more guilty, get away with the crimes that they're committing right in front of them. Sometimes torturing them with them crimes. And a lot of times the very energy that they ultimately victimize somebody else with, which would make them guilty and otherwise quiet, is something that would have been forgiven outright if they just would have stood up for what's right in the presence of having been guilty. In whatever way they are, that's being held over their heads. Don't you know that's your salvation in and of itself? Do you not see that the only thing that's going to get you forgiven, truly forgiven for what you've done, is showing us a bigger picture in regards to not only what happened to you, but what others are doing in front of you because they think they can hold that over your head. That's your redemption right there. But y'all too scared to be redeemed. You're too scared to make the change. A lot of y'all still doing the evil that you're hiding and thinking you need to do it or crave to do it. And those who are hiding behind your secret are ultimately coercing you even into further deservings of what otherwise comes with doing the wrong things in your own lives. Because you let them hold your secret in the name of letting them do whatever they want to do, you're just getting worse and worse at what it is you shouldn't be doing in the first place. You think you're getting away with it, but really it's just your karma piling up. And at any moment, that entity that's holding that over your head could very easily just turn on you just for shits and giggles. And all the things that you want hidden in the, they'll come out anyway. You would have did better telling us all that you did what you did, and then boom, these jerks doing this and they holding it over all of our heads. You don't mind being a bad guy when it comes to the evil that you're doing that can be hidden, but you're afraid of being a bad guy in regards to turning on wrongdoers? And you don't see how the devil is holding that over you? You don't see how that lines right with his intentions? He has to hide behind the guilty. And the guilty has to be too fearful to otherwise be held accountable. And or stop the stuff that it needs to be stopped in any damn way. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying you're going to face the fire any damn way. If you're guilty, you ain't hiding what you're doing from the Most High. You may be able to hide it from most people. And what you find out is one out of every third person has got something they hiding too. But they're going to point a finger at you and vilify you. Only for them to find that their secret's going to come out too. When everybody's secret's out in the open and everybody knows what everybody's darkest is, you start realizing ain't nobody better or worse than anybody else. In a lot of cases, man, you're only going to find a few decent people, honestly. A lot of people are warring with things that they would never let their character display if they have any control over it. And the first thing the guilty gonna do is be a part of the lynch mob that ultimately goes after somebody else, because they think that's what ultimately puts them in the strongest position to look credible and or decent. Haven't we seen that psychology so many times in our lives? And so many people are afraid of coming out or whatever the case may be, that they don't realize that every third person got something going on. It just comes down to, what's the bigger picture? You say you believe in God. You say you understand that there may be an afterlife and you could be going to the worst of it. What gives you the best possible outcome and favor in those circumstances? What makes the Most High say, yeah, this person probably deserves a cup of water in hell? You know what I'm saying? If you damned and you know you're going to spend the rest of eternity there, what's going to give you the favor that others don't have in that space? It's going to be that for which make him proud. In the end. Yeah, you did this, that, and the third, but you broke down the pillars that held evil factions together. A lot of y'all will sacrifice yourself trying to do wrong. You will risk your lives to get $1, but will be terrified to risk your lives in regards to this. In regards to deteriorating what the devil holds in place to continue controlling the earth. And won't think about that in those ways at all. Won't look at it that way in any fashion. The things that you have in your head may very well deteriorate all of what's going on in certain situations that otherwise causes a lot of suffering, but you ain't gonna tell nobody what you know because you're too fearful of what happens when you do, but are not fearful of what happens for doing the wrongdoing that you continue to do, to amass the power and money that ultimately you live for, only for all of it to be taken from you anyway, because of the pillars that stand in place to hold you accountable but not be held accountable. It sacrifices you in the end any damn way. You know how many people go in their grave having that wisdom without the opportunity to be alive, to do it right? They don't get a chance. How many of us are going to watch that happen? How many people then died in the name of corruption, died in the name of wrongdoing, died in the name of money, only to find out that it didn't do nothing for them afterward? They would have did better standing on their square fighting for something good. At least they would have felt more confident going into their grave. At least they would have known that they took that with them, that legacy of standing against the corruption in the world or whatever, standing against that for which is wrong. And so many people are looking at people and saying they're wrong because they choose to love this way or they choose to pray that way. That's not what's wrong. Your government being fine with genocide is the real evils in this world. You know, I think about someone I see every day. She says she pray to God. She goes to church. She prays to God. She loves the Lord. Her relationship with God is strong. Maybe God will use her in a way to start doing God's bidding. But a lot of people go after relationships with God just so that they can exalt themselves with a happy life. If you're going to go toward God, do his work. You see these people out here suffering. You see these people out here celebrating nonsense in the name of nonsense, falling into nonsensical fates. Stand up against that for which is evil. Show some backbone that all of them don't show. Stand up for what's right and define it correctly. People think believing in God is just about basking in the sunset. That's not, no, fam, we're at war. You got people out here starving people on purpose, purposefully neglecting the earth in certain ways that otherwise bring about these natural disasters like that tornado that's coming toward Florida right now. They're doing things to the earth that makes that what it is. And you'll be quiet to that, but you call yourself somebody is praising God? Like, you're not doing God's work. Your relationship with God is based on your desire to be happy within your own skin. You don't care what happened to nobody else. That's not him. He's not with that. He's not doing that. With the people that truly know him and love him and are living for him, he's going to assign you to do something that ultimately helps the process of deteriorating the pillars that keep this earth strangled by his enemy. You're going to do work. You're going to start standing up for something that don't have nothing to do with you when you start having the type of faith that he ultimately wants you to have. You ain't going to just sit there putting your hands in the sky and look and that's it. No, you're going to do something. He's going to mobilize you to stand up against the evils that are out here. That's your job once you have that relationship with God. Until then, you're just looking up at the sky waiting for a blessing to come your way, never once putting yourself in the strongest position to deserve it. Use that energy that you're pouring into yourself toward raising awareness for those who can't speak for themselves. Save somebody from something. Tell the truth, learn the truth, and share it. That's how you show God you really love him. In my opinion, you're doing the work. You do his work, you do his bidding. You deteriorate Zionism, that's what you do. Or some fashion of evil that you're aware of. Because that's what he's at war against. Praise God. I love me. I want the best for me. I hope I get what I'm supposed to have. And when I have it, I'll praise you some more. Man, that ain't nothing but vanity. That's not real. That's not what he put you here for. That's not what he does with his people. I don't care what religion you follow. This is the time. This is the era where you start waking up to the understanding that once you had that relationship with God, now it's time to turn your attention to not just teaching people about God, but destroying what keeps the devil controlling the earth. You know what's going on with Palestine and you're not posting about it and you call yourself a believer in God? You don't know God. You don't know him like you think you do. You know what's going on in Congo, but you're still buying the latest iPhone, but you call yourself a follower of Christ? You don't know Christ. You say you're on your deen, but you stand behind people who are doing evil deeds, corruptible pillars of destruction that stand firm behind the guilty, and you're quiet about it? You ain't doing this. You're not, no, you're not praising Allah with that. That's not how he wants you to handle you. That's not how he wants you to handle the limited time you have on earth during this corrupt time. We're alive here. If he wanted you to be like that, he would have had you born by yourself in the middle of a place where there ain't no one else. And then you can do that. Your prayers matter. But after you finish praying, then you get to work. And what are you working on? Exalting yourself? That ain't enough. What you working on? Trying to get as much money as you can so that you can pay into whatever your dreams are, I'm sorry, friend. You exalting yourself. You're not doing nothing. You're just making the pillars that hold this thing up in an evil way stronger by paying into it, by making it more wealthy off of your works. That's not going to help the people who are suffering, who don't have the choice to do the things that you do, that you can do, that you choose not to. That ain't helping them. It's time to unlearn some of this self-exhaustion nonsense, man. It ain't helping nobody, including your legacy. You're going to go down in history on the wrong side of it just because you were thinking about yourself. That's literally it. That's what the Lord put in my heart this morning, amongst other things that have already been said. Tell these people, if they really want to be close to me, to start doing the work. And it ain't just about reading and putting their head down, but it's about lifting your head up and having the confidence that no matter what the consequences are, if you're doing the right thing, you're aligned with his timing. So if he sends you this way or that way because of those consequences, you're still in the best place for you. And that's the faith you need in order to get around the leverage that the evil one holds over your head. And you will be in the 1% because most people are afraid to do that. BDL 44, thank y'all for watching. I'm out.